Hey everyone, intuitive and astrologer Lisa Salvatore here to talk about the entrance of Libra season, the autumn equinox, and the new moon in Libra that takes place at the end of the month. Today that I am recording this video, it is Thursday, September 15th. Mercury retrograde is well underway. This particular Mercury retrograde may feel a little more rough if you've got important points and placements in Libra, Gemini, and or Virgo. Not to say that if you don't have those signs in your chart strong, you will not be feeling the retrograde, because we do all typically feel the retrograde cycle, but those points and placements seem to be getting directly affected the most. So stay strong as we are about halfway through this cycle. And we're going to talk more about Mercury's retrograde cycle as we go throughout this video. Now, September through December, the energy, the momentum is absolutely going to pick up in every single way. Yet we do still have a lot of planets retrograde, which means that action might be harder to come by, or we may feel that things are coming at us too quickly, and they more than likely are. But it's up to us personally to decipher what is worth our attention and where we need to slow down and take a step back and reevaluate. And in some cases, where to let go. Speaking of letting go, on September 22nd, the sun moves into the sign of Libra at 9:04 p.m. Eastern Time. So happy birthday to all of our Libra souls. It is your season. And we actually have a couple of nice things going on at the exact day that the sun enters Libra, which is September 22nd. So yes, the sun enters Libra. It is also the autumn equinox, which is the entrance of the season of autumn here in the Northern Hemisphere. This is where the northern and southern hemispheres experience equal parts day and night, light and dark. Here in the northern hemisphere, the equinox marks the beginning of astronomical fall, which is where the daylight hours continue to shorten until we get to the winter solstice on December 21st. But before I go into detail about the spiritual meaning to the autumn equinox, because in my opinion, of all of the equinoxes and solstices, the autumn equinox is my personal favorite, but also I feel it is the one that does tend to carry with it the most spiritual weight. But let me backtrack for a moment. September 22nd, also, we are experiencing a really nice moment of the Mercury retrograde cycle. Quite possibly, maybe arguably, the only really nice moment that we have during this Mercury retrograde cycle. So basically, when the sun is at 0 degrees of Libra, and Mercury will be at the exact same degree because Mercury is getting ready to go back into Virgo, to retrograde back into Virgo the following day on the 23rd. So in order for Mercury to get back into the sign of Virgo, it's first got to retrograde out of Libra, okay? So as it backtracks out of Libra, the sun moves into Libra, and Mercury and the sun essentially do what we call the cazimi, their cazimi moment, which is, think of it like the sun and Mercury having a moment. They're kissing. The lights of the essence of Mercury is just completely illuminated by the rays of the sun. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, if you have any type of communication project or something that you've been waiting to put out into the universe, or something that you've been waiting to talk to somebody about that's of extreme importance, and you've been feeling like, you just don't have the time, or it's not the right time, or you're nervous because Mercury's retrograde, the cazimi moments, the cazimi time period could really be a great time to actually put something out there, something that you've been waiting on. Now, again, you don't have to utilize it, but it is a nice moment. It is said to be very auspicious when we experience the Mercury cazimi. So just a little FYI, September 22nd is really a nice time for you if you have anything that you are working on in the realm of communication. Okay, and then like I said, on the 23rd, Mercury will retrograde back into Virgo at 8:04 a.m. Eastern Time, actually. And that is where Mercury will remain until Mercury officially stations direct on October 2nd. Okay, I've talked about Mercury retrograde a bit if you go back to my previous video, which was the beginning of September leading up to the full moon in Pisces. And even though we've passed that point, you definitely want to check that out. It's often a lot more constructive to go and backtrack. Oh, one more thing I want to mention about Mercury retrograde. Pay attention to what and if anything came up for you on or around September 2nd, because we had a Mercury-Jupiter opposition. And Mercury was actually direct at this point. And then also pay attention to what and if anything comes up for you around September the 18th, because now Mercury retrograde will oppose Jupiter. And then pay attention to October the 2nd, because right after Mercury stations direct, it's going to come into another opposition with Jupiter. And this could bring in some nice resolution to something that's been somewhat of an ongoing issue for you, or nuisance or disturbance, or just something where you needed to tie up loose ends and we're waiting for a pertinent piece of information. And again, I want to preface that by saying this will not be the same for everybody because we all have our own unique astrological chart. So a Mercury retrograde cycle could be really annoying for you and have you held up and delayed and just feeling like the world is against you. And then maybe for me, that particular retrograde cycle was like, great, easy peasy. I'm not having a problem with it at all. It's going to be different. So what I am saying about the retrograde cycle is very general, but overall, the Mercury-Jupiter opposition is a transit that is happening for everybody, but it might not be the same for you personally. So keep that in mind. But those are some key dates that you want to look back to. September 2nd and then September the 18th, which is coming up, depending on when you watch this video. And then again on October the 2nd. Those are some important Mercury moments that you may want to keep track of. And also September 22nd, which is a nice one, which is the Mercury Cazimi. Okay, now back to the autumn equinox, which takes place September 22nd, 9:04 p.m. Eastern Time as the sun enters Libra. Now again, spiritually speaking, okay, the autumn equinox is known as Mabon, and this is the season of harvest. And so this is where we take stock of what has gone on in our lives, in our reality, what we've been working on, what we've been releasing, what we've been trying to attract, to manifest, what we've been trying to create and to bring in, especially since the summer solstice, which was June 21st. Look at the 4 points, the solstices and the equinoxes, as celestial checkpoints, because that's really what they are spiritually. We are seasonal. Our energies shift with the seasons, whether we're always aware of that, whether we're always cognitively aware of that, or consciously aware of it, or spiritually aware of it. It just happens. So the autumn equinox is a really great time to enlist in some form of ritual. It could be really very simple. It is a season of transition. It is the perfect time to honor and reset yourself and all that you have done over these last 3 to 4 months, and yet all that you want to continue to do. If you think about it, this is a time of slowing down. The leaves are such great symbolism to the autumn equinox and what it truly represents, because as the leaves begin to change color, the trees then begin to shed what they no longer need. And the same is happening for us. There's a similar process that happens for us. So it's really a time to harvest the energy of you. And Libra is the sign of equality and balance and yin and yang. And Libra also speaks to our relationships, all relationships. And so, yeah, this is definitely a time of reevaluation on all of those fronts and bringing things into balance, just like the autumn equinox represents equal parts day and night. Now, real quick, if you wanted to do some kind of a ritual for the autumn equinox, I suggest doing it on the evening of the 22nd if you can, preferably around the exact entrance of the sun into Libra, especially if you can get outside and do it around 9:04 p.m. Eastern Time, because that is the exact time that the sun will enter the sign of Libra. It's also our Cazimi moment, so it's even that much more impactful. So either go outside or indoors, however you wish to do it. I always like to create a small altar of items that represent the season. So I will probably go outside. Well, I always go outside, but I'll probably the day of or the day before get outside and collect some autumn-like pieces, specific leaves, perhaps some acorns, feathers, whatever I find on my run or my walk. And I will use those, and then I will use specific crystals that I have. And some of the best ones to work with for the autumn equinox are topaz, amber. Topaz and amber are both for protection and manifestation. We've got smoky quartz for courage and our throat chakra, also our intuition. Then we've also got aventurine is another good one to work with, which is all about abundance and prosperity. That one is green. There's lapis lazuli, which is always a great one to work with for working with opening up our third eye, trusting our intuition, and also creativity and expression. And citrine is always one of my personal favorites to work with for abundance and bringing things to fruition and manifestation. Now, interestingly enough, I just realized, as I was mentioning before about how we basically live for the season, right? Our bodies are attuned to do that, whether we're always aware of it or not on the conscious level. It's just the way that it is. And so today I happen to be wearing my smoky quartz, which I mentioned. And it's funny because I didn't even realize that until right now, and I waved my hand in front of my face. But yeah, so smoky quartz, a great stone for the autumn equinox. That's what we're talking about today. So anyway, use one of your stones or a bunch of your stones. If you don't have any of the ones I just mentioned specifically, that's okay. Use what you've got or use none at all. Again, these are just suggestions. You don't have to do anything that I say, but I always like to do something like this for the autumn equinox. and then get a piece of paper, or if you have a journal, light a candle, put on some light music, do a light meditation if you wish. Put your crystals around you and journal on what you are finally releasing, what you know in your soul that you must let go of to help to propel you forward. Also journal on what you are wishing to bring in, what you are harvesting. What are you ready to be the most abundant in? Think about all of the thoughts and all of the worries, also all of the work that you've put into the last few months, and look back and see what of that has been very constructive for you. And if so, call more of that in, and if not, release it, let it go. This is all about releasing that which we no longer need as we progress into the end of the year. Because again, things are going to really pick up momentum, even though we may still feel stuck in a lot of ways. So again, journal about what you wish to release and what you wish to be more abundant in, what you wish to call in. Is it love? Is it money? Is it contentment? Is it all of the above? Is it balance? You can keep it simple. It doesn't have to be a long, elaborate process. Narrow down that one thing or two things that you absolutely really want and work toward them. And be sure to get some rest. It's just a natural feeling that happens with this process of the autumn equinox and the sun's entrance into Libra. We tend to go inward. We tend to go even a little bit dark. And not dark in the way of negativity, but dark more in the sense that, again, we're just kind of shutting the lights off for a little bit. We're closing the blinds, okay? Have some moments to reflect. Again, to reset and honor where we are currently and where we still wish to be. Okay, and before we get to the new moon and the new moon chart, I do want to mention that this is the time right now where things can definitely feel very combative, and everyone is feeling a lot more reactive, okay? Since Mars's entrance into Gemini on August 20th, and Mars is now cruising through Gemini and is going to station retrograde at the end of October. But while Mars is in Gemini and now Mercury is retrograde and Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, there is a big emphasis, a strong emphasis on our words, but especially about reacting. And so, I mean, I've even seen it on social media. I've had to just tap out of conversations because I just don't want to go there. But I've noticed that, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, that people are so much more quick to snap without necessarily reading the fine print. So it's really important that when you're triggered, when you're sparked by something that somebody says or does, to try to take that moment, okay? And I know it's difficult, okay? But to really try and take that moment, and this is why I always say forewarned is forearmed, knowing that there is a much more combative energy to the air. And this is everywhere, okay? For everybody. But knowing that that is what is happening at the moment, okay? And just taking that little bit of extra time to process or to reread something. I've had to do it myself a few times where I've read something quick and I've taken it one way, and I'm so glad I didn't react, because when I went back and actually, with a clearer head, read it again, I was like, oh, that's not what was meant by that. And I just took it the wrong way. And that's happening all over, especially on social media. So, before you go into something and get into an argument, just take a few extra moments to make sure that what you are about to pop off on is A, true, and B, really worth it, because a lot of times it's not, right? Again, everybody wants to have the last word with Mars and Gemini. Everybody's wit and their words are just on fire. Now, also, I want to mention that, and I mentioned this in my last couple of videos, so again, I'm going to link them below if you haven't had a chance to listen to those. But aside from Mars being in Gemini and Mercury being the ruler of Gemini and Mercury now being retrograde, but it's really important right now to also pay attention to your intuition. Trust your gut, okay, above all else. Always go in to try and seek and find the balance before making an important decision. Check in to see how it truly feels, how it sits with you. Don't rush. Now, as we get into October, Saturn and Uranus are going to be pretty much bouncing around the degrees of an exact square. And that is going to produce a lot of tension. So that's what's going on. Now, let's talk about the new moon that takes place in the sign of Libra. This new moon takes place on September the 28th at 5:55 p.m. Eastern Time at 2 degrees and 48 minutes of Libra. Now, just another little FYI, if you're into numerology, you probably know that 5555, fives are all about fluctuating circumstances and challenges and conflict. But after 5, we get to 6, which is all about restoring harmony, and Libra is the sign of harmony, so I don't think that that's a coincidence. This new moon has a lot of energy surrounding it, as always, but it's calm in a way. It feels kind of positive, feels really good. It has an air of optimism and belief surrounding it, but at the same time, it's like there's just ripples underneath the surface, right? And there's definitely a lot of emphasis on our relationships of all kinds, and the equality of our relationships. And are we treating others fairly? Are we being treated fairly? There's going to be a lot of contemplating on this. And at the time of this new moon, Mercury retrograde is now back in the sign of Virgo. So we are much more focused and critical of the details, maybe overly so. So we want to watch out for that. Let me pull up the chart. Okay, so here we have the Libra new moon. Did I say full moon before? I don't know. Anyway, it's a new moon. Libra new moon, September 28th, 5:55 p.m. Eastern time. Ignore the place I have it set for because you would set this for whatever part of the world you are in. All right, so here we've got the new moon. That happens when the sun and the moon are aligned, harmonizing with each other, 2 degrees and 48 minutes of Libra. And this new moon is in almost an exact opposition to Jupiter over here in Aries. Now remember, Jupiter magnifies everything. Jupiter blows everything up. And one of the key words for Jupiter is expansion. It's also optimism. It's also a social planet that speaks to social circumstances. So there should be a lot highlighted around this new moon. Now the thing is, Jupiter is retrograde. So there is a feeling of, don't be too big for your britches. Don't push beyond an exhaustible level. If the way seems clear, then go for it. If not, and you have to stop, just try to remember that the path will clear. Again, it just might not be now, but it's going to be very easy to overextend yourself under this energy, especially when it comes to doing things for other people. So be careful of that you don't say yes all the time when you really want to say no. And I love my Libras, but one of the shadow sides to Libra energy is that they will say yes to things because they want to do the right thing and they want to be fair to everybody and they want to be nice, or polite. But then what ends up happening is that you end up rejecting yourself in the process, and then you could get resentful for it. And then that's where that passive aggressive side can come out. And we want to try to avoid that. So again, this goes back to thinking things through. Take a moment. You don't have to say yes right away. Make sure it fits in with your schedule, with your trajectory, because there is a tendency with this new moon to overextend ourselves in the way of helping others. It's great to help others, but we want to make sure that, like on the airplane, you want to put your mask on first, right? Now, we've also got Mercury over here now at 2732 of Virgo and still retrograde, conjunct Venus in Virgo right here. Basically, this Mercury-Venus conjunction is conjunct the new moon. It's an out-of-sign conjunction, but it's conjunct the new moon. So again, this pulls in the focus of relationships and communication. But here is the caveat to this. Okay, Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, so Mercury is now in the sign of his exaltation, but he's retrograde, right? Venus is also in Virgo, direct, but Venus is in Virgo, and Virgo is a sign that Venus struggles in. So Venus in Virgo is really all about the details and can also be hypercritical of themselves and of others. Now, Venus is also the ruler of Libra, and this is a Libra new moon, okay? So you see how this is all kind of intertwining, but Mercury and Venus both right now are not in the best place because yes, even though Mercury is in the sign that he loves to be in, he is still retrograde. So it's like, again, I always use this analogy. It's like trudging through quicksand. You can make some movement, you can gain some traction, but it does feel like there's resistance and stress surrounding it because there is. And Venus in Virgo is stressed normally. That doesn't mean Venus in Virgo is bad. So if you happen to have Venus in Virgo, there's a lot of really positive traits that come along with that. And I'll probably do a video about Venus through the signs. But please don't take that to mean that Venus in Virgo is bad, because it is not. It's just that Venus struggles a bit in Virgo because, Venus is all about connection and love and pleasure. And Virgo has a lot of greatness to it. But one of the big things about Virgo is that it really is about the details, right? And it has to make sense, and it has to be practical, and it's all about service. And yes, I'll do this, but it needs to have an end game. It needs to have a result. It needs to make sense. And that has its place, and that could all be very good. So anyway, all of that to be said, this is a strong focus around this new moon. The way that we communicate in our relationships, the way that we connect with others, or the way that we don't, the way that we value our own integrity, the way that we provide for the people in our lives, and the way that we feel we're provided for emotionally. Now, to pull a little more fogginess into the equation, we have Neptune over here at 23 degrees and 46 minutes of Pisces, opposite this Mercury-Venus conjunction. So this further emphasizes a confusing element. Now, on one hand, it could be very dreamy, it could be very romantic, it can be very sentimental, but again, we're dealing with Neptune, so it could also be disarming and confusing. And I want to mention here that when it comes to information, because there's going to be a lot of information in general coming at us as a collective, okay? From all different sources, all different outlets, all different media outlets. And that's why I mentioned the part about tuning in, tapping in, and going inward, because you really need to decipher for yourself what deserves your attention and your energy, because there's going to be a lot of noise as we go throughout the remainder of 2022, and it's really going to kick up and increase around this new moon. So don't be surprised if your phone is ping-ponging with information coming in from all different media outlets, from your friends, from your coworkers, from the people that you follow. You may have to do a detox because it's going to be a lot. Now remember, Mars is also in Gemini. So that's information, that's words. So there's a lot happening to indicate this. So it might be a good idea around this new moon to actually go through your subscriptions on your phone, on your computer, and just see what's still worthy of your attention and your time right now. And if it isn't, you probably are going to want to do away with it, because it's going to be that much easier to really lose it as we move throughout the rest of this year. Again, Saturn and Uranus are coming closer and closer to an exact square. Basically, the beginning of October, the 1st through around the 12th, we're going to really be feeling that pressure cooker energy, the start, stop, the movement, and then the restriction, the desire to break free, but maybe not feeling like we can do anything just yet. That's all going to increase. So the more we can prepare for that, the better it's going to be, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Now we've got Pluto over here at 26 degrees and 9 minutes of Capricorn, and Pluto's also still retrograde. Pluto is making a supportive aspect to the Mercury-Venus conjunction. Again, this tells us that when we're really willing to go deep and examine our psychological underpinnings and sit with it and work with it, there's always some wisdom to be found. We're willing to have those really intense but necessary conversations. There's always something positive to come out of that. But we must do it in an extremely conscious and cautious manner, because of the energy surrounding this new moon. We want to make sure that there's a balance, keyword for Libra here, a balance between our words and our actions. Make sure that what you are really feeling and what you are thinking is what you're actually saying. Because again, I just want to highlight that Venus and Mercury are not in the best position right now, but they really are vying for each other's attention. They want to get their point across. Now, helpfully speaking, Saturn is in a trine to Mars. Saturn over here at 19 Aquarius, in a trine to Mars at 18 Gemini. And so this is helpful for working on projects, making our to-do lists, and getting things done. Strong mental energy there, supportive. But Neptune is squaring Mars, okay? Neptune over here in Pisces is squaring Mars in Gemini. Actually, we've got a T-square going on here. It's kind of wide, but it's still here. It's operational. We've got Mars over here at 18 Gemini. We've got Neptune over here at 23 of Pisces. Then we've got Venus and Mercury here at 27 and 25 of Virgo. And while this can definitely have a focused quality to it, it can also have a deceitful quality to it. Cloudy. So again, focused on details, but very slow. And again, making sure you're reading the fine print on every single level, because there is this energy of cloudiness, fogginess, making sure we're seeing the forest through the trees, okay? And again, as long as you're aware of this and you're going into it optimistically and hopefully, but also cautiously, should be fine. I actually do think this is a good new moon to set intentions with. And again, there could be a lot of confusion and contradiction that's happening, that's coming at us from the outside. So just make sure you watch out for that, okay? And again, do your research. Don't just assume something is one way because so-and-so says it or this person says it. Again, drop into how you feel. Be aware. That's all. Just be aware. Okay, one other thing that I want to mention. Obviously, if you follow me, you know that I'm big into the fixed stars and the minor bodies in astrology. And I use a lot of them when I do my private consultations because they give deeper layers and deeper meaning to a person's birth chart, especially when they are conjunct important angles and planets in the chart. So here we've got Poseidon, okay, at 14 degrees and 29 minutes of Scorpio. And it's pretty tightly conjunct the South Node in Scorpio and opposite the North Node Uranus conjunction over here. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, Poseidon is the Greek god of the sea, okay? And he works in tandem with Neptune. Neptune is the god of the sea. Poseidon is the Greek god of the sea and water generally. Also rules over floods and earthquakes and horses actually, but that doesn't really pull into what I'm talking about. Poseidon also carries the trident, which is also the symbol for Neptune, FYI, little mythology for you. He's basically the Greek god of the Asian Sea. The thing about this is that Poseidon was actually known as the savior of the sailors, helping them to navigate the waters, especially if they were troubled, and also the averter of earthquakes. So he's also said to prevent earthquakes and prevent floods in some cases. So again, as everything else goes, there is some contradiction to it. But I'm bringing this up because it will not be surprising if we do hear about some flooding or some earthquakes over in that part of the world, okay? Perhaps there will be some strong flooding, hopefully not. But we are likely going to see a lot of water and weather disturbances coming from that part of the world by Greece around the time of this new moon and the couple of weeks after. Okay, and speaking of which, there's also a strong energy of conservation that surrounds this time period. We are experiencing droughts in certain areas. We're experiencing flooding in certain areas. We are experiencing food shortages in specific areas. And again, Libra season brings in harmony and balance, harmonizing, strategizing, taking inventory, taking stock. That also goes for what we're eating, how we're conserving energy, how we're using energy. I'm talking real energy like our electricity, our water. Where can we conserve? Where can we reserve? Especially as we head on through to the winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's important to think like this. Okay, so that's all about the new moon. Again, I do think it's a decent new moon to do some intention setting and some rituals surrounding. But just make sure you stay cognizant of the fact that it is still a little bit murky. And again, because our words are so powerful, even the ones we don't say out loud, just what we think, because of what we're dealing with Mercury and with Mars, just make sure you're very clear with yourself, clear with what you're trying to manifest, clear with what you truly desire. Is it what you really want? Make sure of that, because there is a murkiness to the energy. So even though, yeah, there's a lot of good here and there's a lot about harmony, there's also a letting go energy and a release energy that's very present. So as long as you're clear and as long as you're staying aware of everything that is going on around you and inside of you, you should be good. Now let me get a tarot card for the new moon in Libra. All right, so for the Libra new moon, I'm just laughing because you can't make it up. We got Temperance. Temperance is the card of balance. It's the card of alchemy. It's the card of harmonizing energies. It's the yin and the yang. It's moderation. It's basically everything that Libra represents. Even though the Temperance card is actually the card that rules over Sagittarius, it's a card about balance. It's a card about mutuality. It's a card about chemistry. It's a card about blending and merging of energies, of substances. Need I say more? That's what this new moon energy calls for. That is what this time period calls for. Temper everything, harmonize, be in the moment. Be sure to have equal parts of laughter, equal parts of contemplation. Allow yourself the moments where you need to go dark. Honor that, restore. That helps you to renew your spirit, to keep going. Times are tough right now, no doubt about it. But hopefully this new moon brings something into balance for you. Something that you've been working on, something that you've been desiring. I hope that you have a great new moon and a wonderful rest of September. Remember, you can go right to my website if you'd like to book a consultation. I do private consultations. I also do group sessions. I will be opening up some more group sessions come the fall. You can find everything right on my website, lisasalvatore.com. Make sure you sign up for my free newsletter so that you can be kept aware of new events and blog posts. And also all of my social media handles are down below in the description box. Take care. Bye.